Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a topic that feels straight out of a dystopian novel: how modern workplaces use surveillance tools to monitor almost every move employees make. But here's where this topic personally interests me. I'm not one of those hyper-productive people during all hours of the day. I tend to get a lot done in the mornings and slow down as the day goes on, and I think that's just human nature. Our productivity has natural rhythms, and it's unfair to assume everyone operates the same way all day long. Humans are naturally biphasic with built-in rhythms that include cycles of high energy and dips in focus. Look at cultures with midday siestas like in Spain. They've been doing this for centuries. But in today's workplace, there's this pseudo-productivity expectation where we're supposed to be attached to our computers, responding instantly to every email and message. Managers who enforce this constantly on attitude can be a real drain on the work environment. These companies really only value the appearance of productivity over actual results, with metrics that often miss the point. To be fair, tracking real productivity is difficult, but that doesn't mean we should indulge this as employees. Anyway, let's talk about what tools companies are actually using to monitor us and who's viewing the results. Let's get into it. First up, let's talk about computer monitoring, a reality most of us all know too well. Today, it's standard practice for companies to use tools that track the websites we visit, the time we spend on them, and even which applications we're using. A lot of us have turned to mouse jigglers to avoid going idle on apps like Microsoft Teams. Just search mouse jigglers on Amazon if you don't know what that is, and you'll find all sorts of options. But basically, these devices keep your mouse in motion, so your status always says active, and you don't appear to be slacking off. I'm curious how many of you are dealing with this kind of tracking at work. Do you have any creative workarounds like mouse jigglers, or do you think it's just part of the job now? Let me know in the comments, and let's hear what's happening in your workplaces. But mouse jigglers only really go so far. They might keep your status green, but they don't prevent screen recording software from capturing exactly what's going on your screen. Some popular screen recording tools like Terramind, Hubstaff, and ActiveTrack can even take periodic screenshots or provide video playback of your screen activity. With this software, mouse jigglers really won't help. You're either active and working on the right tasks, or it shows you're doing something else entirely. This would, of course, require someone to review this, which I imagine doesn't get done unless your manager complains. Generally, it's managers and HR departments who have direct access to these productivity and monitoring data, but IT and security teams often get involved too, especially when sensitive data or security is a concern. It's also crucial to remember that HR's role isn't to protect employees, but to protect the company. So when they're reviewing this data, it's usually with the company's interests in mind, not ours. These tools are justified as measures for security and productivity, but they often lead to an atmosphere where employees feel like they're constantly monitored and judged by these automated metrics. And this added pressure doesn't necessarily lead to better productivity in the long run. It just adds more stress and attempts to create workarounds. Next, let's talk about internet and app usage tracking. If you've ever wondered if your company knows which websites you're visiting during the workday, well, they probably do. Many companies use tools specifically designed to log every URL you visit and categorize them into productive and non-productive sites. Honestly, it's amazing to think that companies actually pay money for this kind of thing. This is what happens when you give middle managers too much time on their hands. Some of the most common URL tracking tools include WebTitan, Veriado, and SentryPC. These applications work in the background to log every site you visit, creating a detailed report that managers or HR can review later. So if you spend any time on like social media or streaming sites, it'll show up as unproductive time. And companies do pay a surprising amount of money for this software, which can track way more than just web browsing. Right now, the professional plan for ActiveTrack is $19 per user per month. So that means hundreds or even thousands per month just to track employees' productivity. These systems are marketed as a way to optimize productivity, but honestly, it's easy to see how the system just turns into a privacy invasion. Now let's talk about productivity scoring tools, a whole new level of workplace monitoring. These tools go beyond just tracking when you're online. They're designed to calculate a productivity score based on every digital action you take. Software like Microsoft 365's productivity score, Workday, and Time Doctor are commonly used for this. They gather data on things like how many emails you send, how often you're in meetings, or even how frequently you collaborate with colleagues. All of this data is processed into a single number or score that's supposed to represent how productive you are. Microsoft 365's productivity score, for example, can measure things like your response time to emails, how many documents you've edited or shared, and your level of participation in virtual meetings. With all of these metrics combined, they create a kind of digital footprint that gets boiled down to a single productivity score. But here's the problem. This number is really just a simplified snapshot, and it can be incredibly reductive. It's turning complex work patterns into a number which can't possibly capture everything that makes someone genuinely productive. For instance, deep thinking or creative problem solving might not generate as many points as attending a lot of meetings, even if it's actually far more valuable. So I want to know what you guys think about productivity scores. Have any of you seen these scores used in your workplace? And do you feel they actually reflect the work you're doing? I'd love to hear if you think these metrics are helpful or just adding pressure. Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. Managers and HR departments are usually the ones with access to these scores, and they might use these scores as part of regular performance evaluation, which makes no sense for technical jobs. In some companies, executive teams also look at these scores to gauge overall productivity across departments. This means that the data doesn't just affect individuals. It can influence decisions at the team or departmental level when it comes time to justify layoffs. If a department's scores are low, it's all based on metrics that may not even fully reflect the team's real contributions. So then they just have to rehire for these roles later down the road. Honestly, the fact that companies are investing money into these tools that boil down productivity to a single number is pretty mind-blowing. Instead of trusting employees to manage their own time and focusing on meaningful outcomes, they're putting their faith in pseudo-productivity metrics. I guess it's really not new, it's still dumb though. The real irony here is that these tools can actually hurt productivity more than help it. When people know they're being scored based on metrics like email responsiveness or meeting attendance, they might start focusing on ticking those boxes rather than doing the actual deep focus works that actually makes a difference. Productivity scoring can end up stifling creativity and encouraging this culture of just doing things to hit a number, and that is bad for innovation and building new products. Another question I have is, who's keeping these watchers accountable? Monitoring for security is one thing, but constantly tracking employees without transparency will lead to an atmosphere of distrust. As workers, especially senior engineers, we need to be aware of this stuff and let our employers know we don't want it. We have the experience and insight to advocate for metrics that actually reflect meaningful work rather than these pseudo productivity scores. By being involved with our stakeholders and taking ownership of our project management tasks, we can focus on metrics that are transparent and genuinely tied to project outcomes. That way, metrics are based on discussion, open to debate, and account for all the risks, variables, and effort that actually goes into technical work. It's an approach that respects the complexity of our roles and allows us to work more authentically. At the end of the day, surveillance in the workplace is a balancing act between productivity, security, and privacy. And it's up to companies to strike that balance responsibly. So what do you think about these surveillance tools? Are they really necessary or do they go way too far? What kind of metrics do you think actually make sense? Let's get a conversation going in the comments. And with that, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video on tech and workplace dynamics.